Thank you. Welcome everyone to the February 24th, 2021 meeting of the Rotterdam Town Board. We entered executive session at approximately 6:41 p.m. with a motion by Mr. Christou and a second by Mr. Gittarelli, with everyone signifying in the affirmative for the possible discipline of employee number 06202018. And this was done subsequent to our going through the agenda for the meeting this evening. At approximately 7 p.m., we exited executive session with a motion by Mr. Christou and a second by Mr. Gittarelli, with all, again, voting yes to exit executive session. So again, welcome to the meeting. At this point, so that we can just have the roll one more time. Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Diane, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. I just needed a motion because nobody made a motion to get out of the agenda meeting.
Well, the motion was by Mr.
Yeah, but that was to go in executive session, so I didn't know. Usually I need a motion to get out of the agenda meeting. You know, who adjourns.
Adjourn the agenda meeting.
Go ahead. We'll adjourn the agenda meeting. Let's, Mr. Christou, go ahead.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
I make the motion.
Thank you. Did someone second?
Motion by Mr. Christou, is there a second for adjournment? Second by Mr. Signor.
Thank you. Just want to have, so for the record, thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Sure. So, Ms. Marco, call the roll, please.
Mr. Christou,
Present.
Mr. Gittarelli,
Present.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Present.
Mr. Signor,
Present.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Present.
5 present. Thank you.
Would you all please stand for the pledge? And Mr. Signor, would you lead us, please, this evening?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So before we get into our public comment privilege of the floor and our meeting this evening, I want to welcome Gabe Nugent and Mary Connolly from Barclay Damon, who are joining us this evening. Gabe is a former federal prosecutor who heads the Syracuse office, and Mary has a background in regulatory compliance issues. They're going to give us a brief update and presentation on their phase 1 recommendations as they've concluded the auditing the police department's SORA, or Sex Offender Registry Act policy. I'm referring their suggestions to the collaborative forum to address the governor's executive order 203, which has to do with reform and reconciliation. Mr. Godlewski, again, misled the public and news media with a conspiracy theory that was not true. The Daily Gazette then published an article stemming from his erroneous theory. The town was withholding documents from him, and that linked the Barclay Damon SORA audit to the governor's executive order. There is no Gervin and Ferlazzo retainer executed for the SORA issue we contemplated. The town undertook the eminent domain, or EDPL process over again to ensure that our seeker process was complete and fair. That's how we do things. So the attorneys will not take questions this evening to give the town board an opportunity to digest the audit and discuss releasing the audit to the public with counsel after our meeting this evening has concluded. Tonight, I want to reiterate to our residents and our children that our community is safe, that we are all safe. The issue occurred in 2018, and I again express my thanks to the officers for their dedication, hard work, and professionalism. So at this point, I'm going to turn over the meeting to Gabe and to Mary. Thank you very much for being here this evening, Mr. Nugent and Ms. Connolly. Thank you.
You're welcome. Should we just run through a summary of our report findings?
Yes, please do. And if you want to do any screen sharing, let us know. But yes, please go through the findings. That would be great. and give
Sure,
those.
will do. Good evening, everyone. My colleague Mary Connolly and I were retained last summer with our initial scope being to look at the Rotterdam's Police Department's compliance with the New York State Sex Offender Registry Act, which imposes certain obligations on municipal police agencies with respect to the tracking and monitoring of sex offenders, different requirements with different level sex offenders, but it does have specific agency obligations at the law enforcement level. And we were retained. One of the first things we did was take a look at SOPs and materials that existed with the Town of Rotterdam Police Department related to its compliance with the Sex Offender Registry Act, which we call SORA, S-O-R-A, and I'll refer to that for short. We reviewed that documentation, and we then conducted some interviews of Rotterdam police personnel. We interviewed Deputy Chief Michael Brown, and we also interviewed Lieutenant Bill Mayle and another Lieutenant Connor Lee. And in high-level summary, our findings were that at present, the town has very good proactive procedures in place for complying with SORA, and very good personnel who do a very, really actually exceed what is required under SORA, under the state law, in terms of monitoring the registry. And at least since Connor Lee, who has the primary day-to-day obligation of complying with SORA for the police department, does a very good job of compliance and has actually introduced a number of proactive practices that actually exceed what is required under the law. What we see is a pretty high level of activity at present. Collaboration with other agencies, whether it's parole or probation, collaboration with school officers, and then also sister agencies to track the whereabouts of offenders, and also good collaboration with the district attorney's office when there may be a violation of a sex offender's reporting obligations. What we observed was that the practices the town employed in some ways were really dependent on the personnel responsible. And so at present today, what you have is a team of Connor Lee and Bill Mayle, with Connor Lee reporting to Bill, but carrying out the SORA compliance for the department. And our recommendations were that the town police department should update its procedures to make sure it captures all of the very granular and proactive steps that Lieutenant Lee takes to sort of ensure that we're in compliance. So our general conclusion, and I read a press article suggesting that we found major faults with the current system, and we really did not. We did also some research on what other towns do and how agencies like the Rotterdam Police interact with the state, and we did not only did not find any major flaws or major areas of risk at present with how things are carried out. We actually felt that it exceeded the generally accepted standard, and certainly exceeded the baseline expectation set by the state when it passed the Sex Offender Registry Act. Our, constructive criticism was that let's get this all down on paper. What we have existing right now are standard operating procedures that are sort of very general at a higher level, but the active day-to-day practices go much deeper. And if someone were to retire, move away, be reassigned, or given new duties, and someone new was brought in, we would want to ensure that all the good practices were easily transferable. And then the other recommendation we made was that that the police department adopt a quality assurance program that is more formal. And what we observed was that there's very good collaboration between the officers assigned to do this work, but that like anyone else, when a third party, even if it's within the same department, comes in and does a spot audit or a review of files, they may be picking up on things that could have been done better. And it's not that because we see major weaknesses, it's just a best practice. So we made some recommendations of essentially documenting much of what's already occurring, creating a quality assurance program, and also formalizing a training program for new, excuse me, my phone rang, formalizing a training program so that, in the inevitable circumstance of someone being, promoted, moved, transferred, given new responsibilities, that a new person assigned to do this work can benefit from all the good groundwork that's been laid in this area. So that's kind of a high level overview. I'm happy to answer questions or get into specifics about some of the practices we observed, but how about I leave it there for the moment?
We'll do that. We'll do that later, Gabe. And Mary, did you have anything to add?
I think Gabe covered all of it in terms of the findings and the report of recommendations. But again, happy to answer questions.
We'll do that after the meeting. We're going to go into a attorney-client session. Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. I hit the space bar. I always forget that also does the same thing. So so if the two of you just remain until after the meeting, we're going to go into a attorney-client meeting with the board, and we'll go from there. But I appreciate you coming here this evening and letting us know, where we were and what we should do moving forward. As I had stated that, our rank and file are doing a great job there at the department, and I'll just leave it at that. So we'll move into the public comment privilege of the floor section of our meeting. Anyone, do we know if there's anyone who would like to be heard under public comment privilege of the floor this evening? If you would like to be heard, please unmute yourself or let Ms. McGurl know. She will help you. And you have approximately 4 minutes to express your concerns, or if you have questions on any of the resolutions that we have before us this evening. I'll do my best before we vote on them or while we're voting on them to answer your questions or concerns. You have approximately 4 minutes to address the board. So is there anyone who would like to address the board this evening?
Can I address the board, please? I just have a couple questions.
You can ask your questions. Go ahead. Yourself and your address, please, for the record.
Yep, Shenandoah Breer with the Daily Gazette. So my first question is, you're going to discuss after the meeting has been closed to the public, the release of this audit or the potential release of this audit with all the board members.
Yes.
If you're going to have a meeting to discuss anything related to releasing anything, I believe open government law requires that if all board members are in attendance, that be a public meeting.
Okay, so when you're asking me the question about releasing, the releasing is going to happen regardless. This has to do with personnel and other matters. So forgive me for not answering your question as appropriately as you asked it. But no, we are going to release the audit. That's going to happen. This is not a decision that we're going to say yes or no to. We're going to. So I hope that addresses your question.
So then you'll be seeking to move into an executive session.
We
That's
have to.
because
We
it's
have to for
attorney-client privilege.
attorney-client matters regarding the audit. Yes.
But can you please be more specific as to what letter under open meetings law that would allow you to go into an executive session for? Attorney-client privilege is not specific.
Having to do with personnel matters and liability, litigation. I mean, what can I say to that? Litigation, potential litigation for the town.
Okay, those are my only questions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, can I ask a question? So at what point does the public get to address or comment on what we just heard in regard to the audit?
After, I mean, you know, they can comment on it. I'm not going to make any other comments to it until the board is properly addressed and that we can make some, you know, put the other potential recommendations along with the attorneys and go from there.
And our executive session is to discuss what exactly?
The potential litigation.
In regard to,
Apparently,
It's not an executive session so much as it is an
Attorney-client.
attorney-client privileged
Yeah,
meeting
thank
to
you.
discuss
Thank you.
what we retained them to do.
after
The audit
agenda?
itself, the expectation is that it will be released. I think the
Right.
discussion is about how much of the privileged material should be disclosed based on client, or not client, but employee interviews, et
So my
cetera.
apologies for using the words executive session. I apologize. I do sometime I do intermingle them or exchange them. I'm sorry. We're going to go into attorney-client privilege meeting. Yes. Thank you. Okay, anyone under public comment privilege of the floor this evening? Anyone under public comment privilege of the floor this evening? No? Okay,
I did ask each individual participating in the
Very good.
meeting, who's not
Thank
a
you.
member of the board.
thank you very much. All right, let's go into the resolutions then. Ms. Marco, the first resolution?
So, Mr. Supervisor, I still have a question in regard to this. So
Go ahead.
at what point, so we're commenting, there's going to be no public comment on this at all, the audit, the result, and I understand, you know, why we're going to go into this, our
I
session.
never said no public comment. That's not what I said.
The
So-
public has the right to comment during privilege of the floor at any of our meetings, including the next scheduled one after the audit is released and it can be reviewed.
Okay,
I just got a text, Steve, and Bill Manicus says you have him muted and he wanted to speak, so I don't know what you want to do.
Oh, he's welcome to speak. What's his number?
He said you have him muted.
Well, he I think that he can, what's the last three digits of his number?
You need to unmute. What is- He said 952.
Okay, let's see if, I can't do it. Ms. McGurl, can you unmute that number?
I cannot unmute it. I can ask that they unmute, and I did ask
So they, I mean,
unmute. So I've sent 3 requests for him to unmute.
can you try calling back in, potentially? Maybe there's something wrong with your phone? I don't have the, I'm looking here.
He said he's going to call back in. Does that help you?
yeah, he'll hang up and try to re-enter.
Yeah, you might be able to get back on, yeah.
Councilmember Gitarelli, I had a further thought on your public comment question, and that is that we're still in the process of that collaborative for police reform. So that's another forum in which the public can comment or discuss the audit's recommendations. So there's actually going to be multiple opportunities. I believe that the chief indicated that I believe it's our next meeting in March. They'll present and there'll be public comment and we'll be able to vote before that April 1st deadline that the governor's imposed.
Good point, Sam. I forgot about that.
So it gives us lots of opportunity for public comment.
Has the chief joined us again? Okay, it looks like you're unmuted, chief. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First and foremost, Mr. Nugent said that he would be taking questions, but the supervisor said he would not. Can I get clarification there? Will he be taking questions?
No, he will not.
He will not. And that's your decision, correct? Not his, because he specifically said he would be happy to take questions.
And if then he also said basically later, to my recollection later on, but you know, I don't want to argue that point, Chief, but go ahead. Anything else?
Oh, yeah, several things. First, as a matter of clarification, just so Mr. Nugent's aware, Connor Lee is not a lieutenant. He's an investigator. He kept referring to him as a lieutenant. Simple matter of clarification. What I would like to ask Mr. Nugent, and evidently he's not going to answer me, is does he feel as though you can conduct a thorough audit without interviewing me as a chief officer of the police department and the person solely responsible for the policies in question? I'm assuming I'm not going to get an answer to that, but I guess since he won't answer, I'm going to address that question to you, Mr. Supervisor.
I guess I'm not going to answer that right now. We'll have to wait until after we have our attorney-client discussion.
I think that's a valid question that should be answered.
I just answered it.
Oh, okay, I guess my next series of questions is, I noticed by scrolling, and I just got this literally minutes ago, so I'm scrolling through the report. It's obviously heavily redacted. Okay, let me finish. It's heavily redacted. Now, Steve, you had mentioned that there was no contract with Jay Gervin's law firm, but I did quickly see his name mentioned here on the bill, so I have some concerns about that.
That had nothing to do that. Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Well, I mean, you said it didn't have anything to do with it, yet his name is on the bill.
I think the requested FOIL had to do with a sewer district retainer that was no longer necessary.
Right. Let me clarify that the resolutions apparently were mixed in. So I'm going to say something, and I think here's what I mean by this. Mixed in by Mr. Godlewski and his erroneous information to the press and wherever else he got his information from, maybe some other officials in the town. So let's go through his erroneous information. So let's not take this any further, because I think what you're doing is inappropriate. I'll be blunt. What we need to do as a board, let me finish. You asked me a question, I'm going to answer you.
Well, it's my time, Mr. Supervisor. I believe I had 4
go
minutes.
ahead. I'm sorry, but you were asking me questions, so go ahead. I thought we were engaging in a conversation. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'll be happy to do that, but I'm not getting the answers to the question. I'm getting the answers to questions that are convenient to you. But I guess my other question would be, I noticed by the bills that it appears, and I can only say that it appears, that this audit was done and finished on, I believe it's 11/19. I guess my question is, where's it been for the last 3 months?
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, did you hear my question?
I heard you. Any other questions?
I would like that answer as well, Mr. Supervisor.
I think it's pretty simple. We're here now during this meeting, and we're going to proceed.
We're here now having a meeting on results that were just given out 5-10 minutes ago to us board members.
So hold on a minute now, Mr. Gitterelli. You're going down a road that is again also inappropriate. The board was made aware of a lot of what was going on. So do not go out there and try to steer. Hang on.
I'm not. I'm saying the final.
No, you are. You're trying to steer the public. You're trying to steer public opinion,
I'm sorry,
which is not what you should do. This is about protecting the community. And if something was done that was inappropriate, then people need to be held accountable for whatever that is. So, and we have to do under reform and reconciliation to make sure that our community is safe. Period. End of story. So this should not be an argument and a dialogue here from the perspective as if there's some finger pointing going on.
I'm not saying there was finger. All I said was we're having a conversation about a final document that was just released. I know we had updates, and I'm not denying that. And yes, I was apprised of the information, but I'm saying we're having a conversation about a final document that was
That's correct.
And in addition to that, the agenda, last minute, everything else that is just last minute thrown in our face all at once. Absorb it all now, and then let's make intelligent decisions and have intelligent conversations.
It's amazing to me. It really is amazing to me that you can make those kind of statements. Here's what the problem is in our community, folks. The problem in our community is that when there are things that are confidential, when it involves personnel, when it involves potential liability for the town, unfortunately, we have elected officials and others who do not understand the truth when they see the truth or hear the truth. They want to make up their own facts and their own stories. Now, I'm going to just say that right now, and I'm going to say that right now, and we'll go down the road later on. But here's the other fact. Here's the other fact. When we engaged with Barclay Damon, and we were also asking for the bill to be paid, we had some discussion back and forth on that too. So if you want to talk about delays, that's immaterial. In my view, that's absolutely meaningless. The facts are what matter. Period. End of story.
And again, I'll bring it back to, I was merely pointing out that we just we're given this final document and we're
going to discuss it under attorney-client privilege this evening.
So,
and we're going to discuss it under attorney-client privilege this evening. Thank you.
And I would just like to, again, with the last minute on everything, you know, and just, it's not fair to the public. It's inconsiderate. It's inconsiderate to us board members that were sitting in on meetings at 5:30 waiting to start based on what was on the town board website. I know we as board members, we received an email that said the meeting's now at 6:30, but it's just the last minute of everything, that the public not being informed, and the fact that amazing. Mr. Godlewski has been targeted twice as to, okay, he's the cause of all this. He was entitled to the information that he requested, and he felt that he wasn't getting it. And
again, you're not presenting the facts. Okay. You're not.
Gentlemen,
you're not
gentlemen, I hate to.
You're not presenting the facts.
Guys.
You're not presenting the facts. But you
I
can
think we
keep
can
doing
deal with
that
this
because
calmly.
that's what you do.
Guys.
You can't make a decision. You can't present the facts appropriately. And so what you do and what others have done is you are exposing the town to liability. That's what you're doing.
Gentlemen, I think this is something to be discussed as we discuss the audit in our attorney-client meeting later. At this point, releasing it was appropriate. Just as Mr. Gittarelli said, the public has a right to this information. So it's being put out now instead of being further delayed.
Correct.
And we're still on privilege of the floor for Chief Manicus. So why don't we let him wrap up his 4 minutes?
Chief.
Sure.
Instead of dominating his time.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Chief.
A couple final things. Obviously, the report is heavily redacted online. I'm assuming I'll get an unredacted version. Is that true?
Any other questions? We'll bring that up with our attorneys this evening.
Okay, and then my last question is, I see by quickly scrolling through the bills that Ms. McGurl was heavily involved with conversations back and forth with the representatives of Barclay Damon. Am I going to be able to speak with either Mr. Nugent or Ms. Conley and ask them what those conversations were about?
I think that would be a waiver of the privilege since she's counsel, but it's something we can discuss in our meeting after. So Chief Manicus, may I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
In my meetings with Attorney Gervin related to the police department, it sounded like you had inquired with him about some matters related to FOIL around the time that the bill for Barclay Damon indicates that they had a conversation with him. Is it potentially true that those matters are related and it is not something to do with the Sewer 7 retainer that you're looking for subject to FOIL?
When you broke up a little bit, but
oh, I apologize. When I reviewed that bill, it looked like the line on the bill had something to do with Attorney Gervin reaching out to Barclay Damon about a question that you had about redactions of FOIL. Does that sound like it was potentially accurate?
No, I don't remember discussing with Jay Gervin about a FOIL in regards to Barclay Damon.
No, I mean generally related to the police department.
Oh, I've had numerous conversations over the last year with Mr. Gervin, not in regards to Barclay Damon.
Contract or
but I guess back to my question. If there is a possibility that you will allow me to speak to Mr. Nugent or Ms. Conley?
I think that's something we have to discuss, but it's a possibility.
Okay, so you'll keep me apprised of that, correct?
Absolutely, of course.
Thank you. I'm all set then.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Anyone else? You know, one of the things that you all have to remember is that we are under an executive order with reform and reconciliation. So all of what we're doing is important. There's been no delays. All right, let's move on then. I don't think we have anyone else for public comment privilege of the floor, correct? Okay. Forgive my passion, and if I was interruptive, I apologize, but I must say that I'm over the misinformation campaign. I'm over a lot of things. Frankly, I'm happy to be liberated, and I mean that sincerely. So take that as I stated it. So moving into the resolutions, Ms. Marco, the first resolution.
A resolution appointing 2 laborers.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Signor. Is there a second, please? Anyone else unmuted? May I have a second for the laborers? Anyone? Okay, I'll second it. Okay, anyone on the question?
Yes. Mr.
Sure, go ahead.
Question, comment. Back to my point that I made a few minutes ago in regard to the late release of the agenda. So the supporting documentation on these 2 hires was just released, and I myself cannot make an informed decision on this based on the information was just released, some questions I had up until it just being released, and there was no supporting documentation. There were no applications, which I see there's something there now. There was nothing clarifying the department, to what capacity they will be working. Were there other applicants? Who will be their superior? Who interviewed them? And us as a town not having the ability, we're asked to make an appointment for two $43,000 positions with benefits without the ability of really getting any details on the interview, the other applicants. And again, up until a few minutes ago, we had none of this other backup information. So with that being said, I'm voting no on this because I feel myself and maybe even, who can make an informed decision on this. So I will be voting no once we go to roll.
Well, you do get the emails that show the postings, right? When we're posting positions.
Yes.
These are DPW labor positions, so you're aware that they're for the Department of Public Works.
Yes,
Okay.
my apologies for not
No worries.
filing everything and keeping everything together. It would just
No
be
worries.
nice to see this maybe before 10 minutes before a meeting. Seriously, Friday would have been nice. We were going to have a New Year's resolution and try to get our agendas out by Friday, but it's on me. I'm not doing my job. I apologize. I'm still going to vote no.
Not on you not doing your job.
That's
We also
fine.
had the contact. We also had the contact and wait for people to respond to us and whether or not they wanted the positions. So it's just not as simple as you state. But thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else on the question?
Thank you for that.
One quick question.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at the paperwork. Is this Mr. Dufek? Is this one of the appointments?
Yes, he'd worked part-time for the town either last year or the year before that.
He's got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, major of science and engineering. Okay, civil engineering.
Yes.
All right.
And
Thank
the
you.
other applicant is qualified and has a nice education as well.
Okay.
Besides wanting to work in Department of Public Works and potentially help us, build our bench here for the future of what we need for not just water sewer maintenance, but also for the future of our water and sewer infrastructure in our community. So anyway, anyone else on the question? Ms. Miller Herrera, did you have something else, or?
It was my understanding that the resolution was on the draft agenda, but the names were not filled in. I know I did not inquire about who was filling the positions
It's,
before seeing it on the draft, on the final agenda come up, but it was on the draft. So if there was inquiries to be made, they could have been made, correct?
Yes, well, they could have been made at any time we posted the positions. It came down.
Sam, I was going off the resume that I think that was attached to the application as part of the agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
Nope. And I saw that in the final, but I know the draft had a resolution about hiring these two positions. So it seems like if inquiry were going to be made as to who was interviewed and what selections were going to be made, they could have been done before this evening.
Yes, but again, back to the general public that does not see anything until whatever, 10, 15 minutes before.
Well, we don't release application materials to the public anyways as part of the final because they contain information that's confidential, such as
I
social
understand
security
that.
numbers. So it's really up to us to make these decisions, even if we're provided with information
Yeah. No, I
later than
understand.
we'd like.
Yes, it's the information that's in there now would just be nice to get before, last week or even before today.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Signor, a second by myself. Is there anyone else on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Christo,
I'm kind of torn between all of this. I do acknowledge Councilman Guidarelli's point. By the same token, I also have some faith in whoever did interview them based on the fact that the supervisor and the department head did interview these folks and made the recommendation. Although moving forward, I would like to see some more information much earlier. I am going to vote yes.
Mr. Guidarelli,
No.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Yes,
4 yes, 1 no.
thank you. Resolution passes. Next resolution, please.
A resolution for a bond for the Curry Road Sewer System Project.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
A motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
A second by Ms. Miller Herrera. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Christo,
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, thank you. Resolution passes. Now we have consent agenda for a number of items. Does anyone have any questions on any of those items? And can I have a motion for consent agenda, please?
Supervisor, I have a question on change order Princetown Road. So the 351, is this a full increase to the initial
Was-
estimate on this job?
That's to my, yes. And it's for valves and other work that needed to be completed once we were in the job. There were some other conditions that we did not know about. Some, I think they knew some about, like one of the valves, I think that they knew there was some issues with it. So rather than obviously not just stop the project, but hook up our pipes to infrastructure that's questionable, we moved ahead to get it replaced.
So it's, and I'm just asking about the process. So it's that large of a difference. So when we estimate or do the engineers not estimate based on the age of the infrastructure, the number of hookups that it just seems so like just such a big number to be off that it's like, okay, we're gonna build in for this and that. Just like I said, because of the age of the infrastructure, how many units are hooked to it.
Sure, they did.
Things like
Yes,
that.
they did. Yeah, there was a, I'm just trying to get to it. I apologize. I'm not there yet. There was a, in every public works project, there's going to be basically a number that's for unforeseen circumstances, right? At the same time, we have, we can make all of the, with all the knowledge that our people have, with all of the knowledge that engineers have, sometimes it just, there are things that that you don't know, right? Once you start getting under the ground. So, there was, let's let's see, just to be somewhat clear. So there was an alignment shift, so there was more material that was needed for that.
Yeah, I saw those.
You see the
Yeah,
different.
I saw that down there.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so, there's, and there's just other, and some additional asphalt that was necessary because, and again, same thing, once they start going into it, plus it's a county road. And so we had more pavement that needed to be taken care of. And once they started digging in a couple of spots, we did have one incident where the road blew out because of the work that was being done. And so that caused the majority of the problem and probably what you're seeing here with that larger number for the milling and the rest of it. So,
And as far as, so 356, as far as the debt on this, so we bonded, part of this goes to water district, what is that, 5?
it's all 5. It's all the largest district in our community is Water 5.
Right, so this just gets added to,
Well,
like I said, we bonded for part, or we probably grants for part.
that's correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
So one last thing on this. I know we have what seems like some unfinished business at the end of that road towards Five Corners.
Mhm.
Some water running. What is the time frame on that as far as getting that buttoned up over there?
It'll be it's weather. I mean, to be blunt, it's we're not able to get there to get some of this done because of the weather. But it's not a major concern according to our water service maintenance supervisor. So, we have to take his guidance on that.
Right, and I understand that, but just with the weather and I guess all the conversations we've been having about risk management in the town, I was thinking
Well,
it'd be good to get it buttoned up as soon as possible. So
we've also had some water breaks. Water breaks on many streets in our community over the past couple of months here, and it seems like every time that we get ready to stage some other work to get some other things accomplished, we have another break to address. So, I mean, it is what it is. That's just how how the business is. So, anyone else on any of the other resolutions?
Mr. Supervisor, I saw another resolution, authorize supervisor to negotiate and execute settlement. I can't find that one. I had it in front of me. Can you elaborate on that one? Call for bids.
Under the agenda meeting, I'd mentioned it. We, you had sent some emails as well. So on this particular subject, we have we're attempting to get as many easements as possible along Carmen Road without having to expend more money to purchase those easements, because what happens is that just goes into the debt service for everyone. So we are working with property owners in that, in that area, and attempting to put something together here that will afford them, I guess, how should I say this, a surety that what happens for their tenants. I mean, to their credit, the discussions that we had to do simply with conversations about making sure that people can afford where they live and not to drive up costs, and to ensure that even from a landlord perspective, they don't have to drive up their costs so much they become non-competitive within that, if you will, within that realm. Now, having said that, I'm not a person who believes in picking winners and losers and those kinds of things. The issue here is very simply that it's an economic decision. And it's also the right decision for these entities. And it's something that I think that as a community, as we venture further here with our comp plan, and then also with other conversations we've had and we're going to continue to have about our infrastructure, that we're doing things in a fair manner as far as what we charge for water, for sewer, maintenance, operation and maintenance. And one of the things that I think that you find, and that you, when I say you, that we as a board see, is that over different years and different time periods, the town did different things. And we're going to work towards a solution for all that in the near future. So that's all I can say to it. But that's what this is about. You know, we've had engineer Joe Lanero from Chazen and I had another discussion with some of these folks. We have been out getting these easements, myself and other members of the staff of the town. So we're in a really good position right now. We're just waiting on a couple of more. We should be ready to go with the construction of that line, particularly since the state is going to be putting in a roundabout over at Lydius and Carmen, and they're going to be, you know, mobilizing to get work done. You know, I'm hopeful that we can kind of time our construction here for a lot of things, and so save money that way as well for the people that are in that district. Any other questions on any other resolutions? Okay, may I have a motion for consent agenda, please?
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion that we accept the remaining resolutions in the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll
by
second.
Christou. We have a second by Ms. Miller Herrera. Anyone else on any questions on the resolutions this evening? Okay. Ms. Marco, would you please call the roll on the consent agenda?
Sure. Mr. Christou,
Yes.
Mr. Gitterelli,
I'm gonna abstain from this.
I'm sorry,
I'm abstaining from this.
abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Yes,
4 yes, 1 abstained.
because I'd like our highway department to get crushed limestone, concrete blocks, and other things. Okay, so those resolutions pass. Is there anyone else under committee reports or miscellaneous before maybe one of you might ask for an adjournment of the meeting?
Do we go into executive session before the adjournment, or?
No, there's no.
It's not an executive session.
It's
It's an attorney-client meeting.
Attorney-client
There you
meeting after the conclusion of this board meeting.
It
Steve,
is.
before you go,
Before-
can you just tell me
There you
who exited with the executive session, who made the motion to exit and who seconded it?
Sure. Who made the motion was Mr. Christou, seconded by Mr. Gitterelli, and all voted in favor of exiting at approximately 7 p.m.
Thank you so much.
And thank
Under
you.
miscellaneous, can I just ask a quick question?
Please.
The first person to speak at privilege of the floor was asking about open meetings, and I just wanted to quickly ask the town attorney whether attorney-client meetings are subject to the open meeting law. I'm not 100%,
I think.
on top of the open meeting law, so I just want to make sure that we're doing things properly.
That was a reporter from I think it might have been the Gazette, Sam, or was Miss Shenandoah Breyer, I think it was. That's who it was.
Yes, I didn't want to mispronounce her name.
Yeah, I believe it's prior. Shenandoah, I remember first.
Because I say
Pronounced Breer.
Breer, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay.
See, you mispronounced it after I attempted not to.
Something like Briar Rabbit, that kind of thing. But I got it.
Just to let you
Sorry.
know, I'm
Somebody
holding
asked
the
the town
committee
attorney
on.
a question. Let's give her a chance to answer.
Yeah, go ahead. What did you say?
I said,
I'm sorry,
someone,
Ms. Breer. Did you say something else?
Yeah, I said that I do have listings A through H in front of me on what you can enter an executive session for from the Committee on Open Government's
Sorry,
right to know.
That's okay. Appreciate that. But we'll have our attorney address the question.
Yeah, that's why I want to ask the town attorney, because I don't know if an attorney-client meeting is subject to the open meetings law at all. So I just want to make sure we're doing it right before we close down the meeting.
It is not. And so I think what Ms. Briere is referring to is section 105 of the open meetings law, which is Public Officers Law 105 for anyone who's interested, who's watching this meeting or participating. And so that does detail the appropriate subjects of executive session. I would also note that there is Public Officers Law 108, which is entitled exceptions. And so any type of meeting that would be exempted from state or federal law is not subject to the open meetings law. And so as many of you know, because you've retained an attorney over the course of time, or you have an attorney, or you are an attorney, obviously the attorney-client privilege is something that is specifically articulated by statute under the Civil Procedure Laws and Rules, the CPLR of the state of New York. And so therefore it meets that exception. I want to say that it's sub 3 of 108, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, so we're okay closing the meeting,
Correct.
our
Because
full meeting now.
you're meeting with attorneys Nugent and Connolly for the purpose of receiving legal advice in relation to the legal work that they have done, which is a privilege
Okay.
and confidential audit.
I think the mispronunciation,
Okay.
the mislabeling of it as an executive session is where people got thrown off.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
apologize.
An attorney-client meeting at the conclusion after this public board meeting. Having said that, Mr. Supervisor, I move to adjourn this meeting.
So under miscellaneous, and I feel I want to make some comments based on what, just transpired in this meeting, what's fresh on everyone's mind as far as, what was one of the main topics of this. And I know we weren't allowed to comment, can't discuss, but I would just like to say that the Rotterdam Police Department does have my full support and confidence in their ability to serve this community. Most importantly, I have complete trust in the integrity of this department under Chief Manicus and Chief Brown. And I want to thank them for their many years of dedicated service. And I know this may not have been displayed perfectly tonight, but as leaders of this community, whenever possible, we should set an example how we should behave and support each other. And I feel my handling of some of this process, I have failed in my support of the leaders and the police department. I apologize and promise to do better. I want to say that I believe under the New York State Law Enforcement Accreditation Council, the oversight and scrutiny of this town, of the town board of operations and disciplinary actions in the PD is unwarranted and unnecessary, and I think would be more of a hindrance than a benefit to the leadership and their ability to do their jobs as already defined. I understand as a board, we have legal oversight obligations to the taxpayers. Policing is not an easily defined business, and our police and all of our employees are people first, and we are all less than perfect. This board and absolutely myself included. This whole thing came about because an investigator made an innocent mistake that was immediately identified, corrected, actions were taken, and based on the outside oversight, this department, I would have to believe all was handled properly and should have been done over with. And again, I am going to go back to Mr. Godlewski. As a board member, I would like to apologize for the town's failure to deliver what even the county confirmed you had rights to handle. You had rights to in your FOIL request, which compelled you to reach out to the Gazette. Please know that some of the comments mentioned earlier are not mine. I would like to mention this board, with myself included, moved FOIL officer duties from the town clerk's office, and the failure to supply Mr. Godlewski with his FOIL request was not the town clerk's office. I take ownership in my role along with that change of FOIL officer duties and believe the town would be better served if we undid resolution 3319, which designated and go back to designate town clerk's office as records access officer manager officer once again. I think we can all agree we live in a great community, and I feel we should, and myself included, especially try harder to portray the image that preserves its integrity so we never get this much press in the Gazette unless it is positive. And with that, I would like to thank Shenandoah from the Gazette for your diligence. And we look forward to much more great stuff happening in Rotterdam press coverage. Thank you.
I think that, you're casting shade on me, and I appreciate that because, the public doesn't care about personality conflicts. The public cares about the government is operating in its in the manner in which we take the interests of the people first and not the interests of politicians or wannabe politicians or others. So one of the things that you state, again, you are doing the same thing that Mr. Godlewski did, which you are misinformed and you're misinforming the public. The other piece that you're referring to as far as FOIL, Mr. Woodward said, if something exists, give it to him. There was no contract with Governor Ferlazzo. So was I supposed to give him 2 blank sheets of paper? Let me finish. I'll let you speak. Listen, Joe, you've got to stop doing that. I'll let you speak and I'll speak.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Because you continue, you're going down that same road that you're involved in here, obviously, because this is what the problem is. If you think for 1 second that I don't value what the police department does, if I don't value the rank and file, you're dead wrong on that.
I did not.
And that's what you're saying. That's what you're saying, Joe. You're making that implication with me. That's exactly what you're doing. I care very deeply about this town. I think we all do. I'm going to say it like that. I care less about what some elected officials' feelings get hurt or something else, because you know what? We have to do things right. And you have information that you have in your possession that talks to some of these things, and you're going to go out there and you're going to tell the public today, oh, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. When it does come out later on, if there's some other things that transpire that have to do with personnel matters, because then what are you going to say then? Are you going to ask for ink to say, geez, I was wrong? Is that what you're going to do? Because that's what you're going to have to do here, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sincerely, thank you.
Well, if I could close on this note, well, I don't know about everyone else not being perfect, but I think I'm perfect. And if you don't believe me, ask all my ex-girlfriends.
All right, Steve, too much.
So with that, I close.
The other thing is that, you know.
So you're seconding the motion?
Yes.
We do get spirited. But we are supposed to be allies and working for the interests of the public, working for the interests of the employees, working for the interests of the future of our community. And that's what I'm doing. And if you want to make any suggestion otherwise, then prove it. Okay, we have.
All right, so somebody make a second.
Somebody.
I'll second that.
Kristen?
Thank you.
I'll second.
And we're seconded by Mr. Signor, also known as Mr. Wonderful, apparently. So, okay.
Mr. Perfect.
We have a motion by Mr. Signor. Is there anyone who would not like to adjourn? Okay. Signify by saying aye if you'd like to adjourn. Board members, aye.
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 Our meeting is adjourned. I want to thank everyone for your attention and appreciate you paying attention for the next few months to what's going on in our town. So there will be a lot of positive announcements and there will be some changes. And I want you to be aware of something simple that as the public, you need to be able to discern between truth and misinformation. And it's difficult when sometimes there are people out there that have standing who will involve themselves with the media, involve themselves on Facebook, involve themselves with their community groups or whatever it is they belong to, and just lie to people about what's truly going on to cover up their own misdeeds. And that's a problem. But know that more light will be shed over the next few months, and know that we are united in interest as a board to do what's right for our community moving forward. So I thank you for your attention this evening.
Steve, I don't have to stay, correct?
Oh, no,
Thank you.
you're welcome.